All right, welcome everybody. This is vacation rental inventory metrics. Just going to wait another minute or two for get everybody logged in here, but really excited to have everybody out here. Right, good stuff. All right, well, looks like we've got a good crew here. Let's get started. Again, this is a webinar, something that's near and dear to my heart. It's vacation rental inventory metrics. This is something that I've been studying for the last 7 years or so. And yeah, a lot of people don't really understand the true understanding of these metrics when it comes to inventory. So let's just dive in. So first up, again, my name is Brooke Fouts. I am the founder and CEO of Vintory and Comparent. Um, just a little bit about me. Started four startups. Ever since I was 25, that's kind of been my thing. I've always been an entrepreneur. Love starting different companies. I cut my teeth in the short-term rental industry about 17 years ago. Almost 18 years ago, I started a company called Vantage Resort Realty in Ocean City, Maryland. Ended up growing that company pretty fast, from 0 to 500 properties, and ended up selling that in 2013. I then started about 6.5, 7 years ago or so. Started a company called Vintory. Vintory, we are a data sales and marketing platform that does one thing and one thing only. We help professional vacation rental managers grow their inventory. So we don't focus on guests, we don't focus on operations. We focus exclusively on the supply side of the house, if you will. And over the last 7 years or so, we've learned a lot. We've learned what to do, what not to do. We've learned what tricks work, what tricks don't work, and just again, really been a student of a lot of the inventory metrics associated with that. I've written a couple books on vacation rentals. My first book was from 0 to 500 properties in 5 years. Then I surveyed 52 of the top leaders and asked them to share their top 10 mistakes, and that was became really the foundation for Vacation Rental Secrets. And then we've just done another book called The Ultimate Tech Stack Guide, which, by the way, we are doing a new release to this. So just recently, we surveyed over 600 different companies. We asked them what technology was powering their vacation rental management companies, and we have tons and tons of feedback. And we're going to be updating that results in the updated tech stack guide, which will be released at Verma this year. So really excited about that. And I started another company called Comparent. Um, Comparent is a marketplace. It's a marketplace that connects vacation rental managers and vacation rental homeowners. So we're driving lots of traffic from the vacation rental homeowners. We again, we have the largest database of vacation rental homeowners that we're constantly emailing. We're constantly doing social media marketing to them, driving them to Comparent because Comparent has over 6,000 management companies listed on there, and it's a great way. What we wanted to do is provide a source, provide an avenue for vacation rental homeowners to do that research on. It's completely free to list your listing on Comparent, so get listed on there. And you can always gather homeowner reviews for free forever. You can always be listed on there for free forever. We do have some upgraded options available that kind of give you some more bells and whistles, but the free option is there, and it's a great way to generate leads. Um, so yeah, so that's a little bit about me. So here's what we're going to be going over today. We'll kind of like just dive in. So again, we're going to be talking about all things vacation rental inventory metrics. Number one, the three levers of growth. Number two, the value of inventory on a per property basis. We're going to talk about the value of inventory at exit. So if and when you decide to sell your business, what are these contracts worth? What is new inventory worth? We're also going to talk about some historical examples of exits. It was really nice of my friend Jacoby Olin with C2G Advisors. He shared a ton of data with me, and I'm going to be sharing that with you here today. And some of that data has never been released, so it's going to be really cool. We're going to talk about CPL. What the heck is CPL, Brooke? It's cost per lead. We're going to talk about CAC. You're going to hear me talk about CAC all the time. CAC is customer acquisition cost. It is such a key metric, and understanding that. And kind of on that note is unit economics. And we're going to be doing kind of a deep dive into unit economics. All right. So with that said, let's let's dive in. So I say this all the time, but it's so true. New inventory is the greatest way you can increase your top line revenues, your bottom line profits, and build your net worth. And I'm going to prove that over the next couple slides. So again, we talked about this, highlighted this in the outline. There's three levers of growth if you think about a vacation rental management companies to increase your top line revenue. You can increase your rate, right? You can increase your occupancy, or you can increase inventory. But I'm going to show you here that increasing inventory has the greatest impact, and again, it's the greatest lever that you can pull. So here's an example of a typical vacation rental manager. You can go out there, with call it 40 homes, $300 a night ADR, 65% occupancy. So let's just say you go out there and you increase your rates by 5%. You will increase your top line revenues by 142,000. So let's say now you go out there and you're able to like go into some channels and get some new occupancy. You increase your occupancy by 5%. Well, guess what? Congratulations. You just hit $219,000 in top line revenue, which is great. You need to do these things, right? But both of these have an upper limit. If you think about it, you can't get more than 100% occupancy. And you can only really push your rates, so hard, so high. So what our team did is we actually went out there. We surveyed our partners. We said, hey, what's the equivalent lift on an inventory basis? So if you're increasing your rates by 5%, what's your, increasing occupancy by 5%, what would be the equivalent lift? And the consensus was about one property a month. So if you go out there and you were to add, in this example, if this was your property management company, you added just one property per month, look at the impact that has. $854,000 to the top line, or 4 to 6 times the impact of rates and occupancy. And here's the beauty: there's no limit. You can't, you can continue to add more and more properties, obviously. So it's infinite. So again, I argue there isn't a greater lever out there you can pull than adding new inventory. All right, so here's an example and a question I get all the time is like, Brooke, what falls to the bottom line in net profits on a per property basis? So I went out there, I asked about 500 different companies. I said, hey, what falls to the bottom line as a percentage? I dug in deep with Jacoby Olin at C2G Advisors, and the consensus was it was about 10%. About 10% of your gross booking revenue falls to the bottom line on average. Obviously, if you have just one property, that may not be the case, but if you have 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 properties, that's usually what we're seeing out there is about 10% falls to the bottom line. Some people get 15, 20%, some people have 1%, but on average, it's about 10%. So, and here's the irony. It doesn't matter if you're like I was in Ocean City, where we were charging 13 to 16% commission, or you're, some of these property managers out in some of these high-end ski markets where you're charging 50% commission. Almost on average, the net, what falls the bottom line in net profits or EBITDA is about 10% of your gross booking revenue. Now, that's before taxes and fees, just or otherwise known as owner rent. And that's the thing. Some people might get more on fees. Some people might get more on commission, but it usually nets out, to about that 10%. So if we take this example right here, and according to Jason Sprinkle at Key Data, the average gross booking revenue per property last year across the board in the United States was about 50,000. I think it was like 49,700 and something change. So 50,000 is the average. In your market, you may not even take a property that does 50,000 because you might be so specialized on super high end. But we're going to use this because this is the industry average. So this is what we're going to use for the rest of the slide deck here today. So 50,000 times 10%, you net 5,000 in profits. That's per year. You don't keep a property in your rental program for 1 year. You might keep your property for, 1 year. Maybe sometimes it's going to stay in there for 10, 20 years. I started Vantage Resort Realty 17 years ago, almost 18 years ago. There are literally properties that I signed up 17, 18 years ago that are still in that rental program, and that company's been sold, I think, twice. So it's just on average. So how do you calculate what your lifetime is? Well, it's a simple formula. You just take 1 divided by churn. Brooke, what the heck is churn? Churn is what percentage of your inventory do you lose on a given year? And again, after asking about 500 different companies and getting lots of data from Jacoby Olin, the industry average is about 10%. So if you take 1 divided by 10%, you get a 10-year lifetime. So in this case right here, we got $5,000 in profit in year one. You hold it for 10 years, so you have a $50,000 lifetime value for that property. So here's a quick little hack alert. You probably notice there were some correlations with the numbers there. Assuming you fall within industry averages with 10% margins and 10% net churn, your lifetime value or profits is equal to your gross booking revenue. So go out there, you sign up a property tomorrow, doing 75K in gross booking revenue, you can assume you're going to make $75,000 in lifetime profits. Let's say next week you go out there, someone calls you up, you get a referral from a realtor, that property is projected to 100,000. Well, you can pretty much take it to the bank. You're going to make $100,000 in lifetime profits over the next 10 years. This is huge. And I would actually argue these numbers are a little bit light because why? What happens over time? Does that number stay flat? No, it's going to appreciate. It's going to go up. And I look at my property, 4 or 5 years ago, it might have only been doing, I've got a property in Bethany Beach, Delaware. It might have only been doing, 50, 60,000. Now it's, doing, much higher than that. So it's going to go up over time. All right. So not only do you have this beautiful stream of income, and there's a reason why, some of these companies, these private equity companies are buying management companies because it's predictable recurring revenue. Predictable recurring revenue is fantastic. It's almost like SaaS and software. It's just a great way to, it's like an annuity. So, but you have this great annuity coming out. But if and when you decide to sell your company, you are going to get a big check. You're going to get a big check for every one of those management contracts. In the next couple of slides, I'm going to show just how valuable these contracts are. So first off, there is multiple different ways of valuing companies. Again, C2G advisors, they're the experts at this. They know how to do this better than anybody. And if you've ever sat in one of Jacoby or Dylan Burgess's sessions, they'll go over all the different methods. But the most popular method is called the multiple of earnings. And it's going to range anywhere between, realistically, call it 4 and 9 times your EBITDA. So for just the case of these examples, we're going to use a 5x multiple. So we do a 5x multiple on that number we did from our example from before, that $50,000 property that's netting 10% or $5,000 in EBITDA. Sorry for all the math here. That gives you a $25,000 per property. Now, again, they usually don't value it based on the contracts. They're valuing it on the EBITDA, but I'm just kind of correlating it back to the contract level. And I'm going to show you, how this all works. So again, you get property, you just added 25,000. Let's say you go out there in the next couple of months, you hire Vintory, you sign up with Comparent, you get 10 properties in your rental program. You just added $250,000 in net worth. And talk to any single person who has sold their company. I've talked to dozens of them. They all come back to me and say, Brooke, I wish I would have stepped on the gas more because I realized I literally did get a check for every one of those contracts. Let's say you really crush it over the next year. Let's say 2025, 2026 is your year. You're going to go out there. You just signed up 50 new properties in your rental program. You just added $1.25 million of hard cash in net worth to yourself and to your company. And let's say you really crushed it over the next couple of years. You add 200 properties. You now built out a company that's worth an extra $5 million. This is legitimate. Talk to anyone who sold their companies. They will tell you, I wish I would have added more properties. I wish I would have stepped on the gas more. All right. So again, I had the pleasure of my good friend Jacoby Olin. He gave me lots of information from C2G advisors. And what he showed was in 2023, if you look at all the transactions he did, and he's done more than anybody in this space, the average contract was worth $39,000 in 2023. In 2024, across his all the M&A he did was 37,000. So it went down a little bit. But check this out, year to date, he's up to $51,000 per contract. Now, he's made it very clear to me. He said, Brooke, I had two very, very large transactions that really skewed these numbers. But it just gives you an idea of what the average M&A was done from Jacoby between all these different deals. So again, real value on a per contract basis. But check this out. I know this is a lot. And again, we are going to be sharing this slide deck as well. So you can kind of go over this. These are actually real deals. These are actually real transactions. It ranges all the way from Q2 of 2021, and you can see it goes all the way till Q2 2025. So this is real deals that Jacoby closed, and you can see some of the per contract prices on the right here, 62,000, 45,000, 35,000. And you can also see the multiples, and you can see the sales price and how many units they had. Really cool information here. You can see, on the top end, $79,000 a contract for that top one. And then, they were doing about 10 million in EBITDA. They sold for $95 million on a 9.5x. And then you can see some of the other ones here. So a nice range. And again, we'll be sharing this slide deck so you can kind of dig into this. But this is a sampling of data from Jacoby. Again, I'll show it in a couple different formats here which I think is interesting. So here, this is what we're looking at is multiples, and the letters in the bottom are just the corresponding, names, to represent the companies from the previous slide. So they range anywhere from four and change all the way up to just shy of 10x multiples. So that gives you kind of a good understanding of what the market is paying right now and what Jacoby is seeing out there. This is really cool. Check this out. You can see the actual price per contract. So again, anywhere from 27,500 per contract all the way up to just shy of $110,000 per contract. Think about that. That must be a heck of a company. And we'll talk about later, kind of what constitutes some of those companies are getting the much higher, per contract basis as well. But check this out. I had my graphic designer pull some really interesting graphs here and charts. I thought this was neat. This is left axis. You have the multiple. So what kind of multiple on EBITDA? Down on the bottom axis here, you have the sales price. So again, ranging all the way from call it 2 million all the way up to close to $100 million. And then the numbers you see inside the blue bubbles, those are number of properties in their rental program. So you can see, obviously it makes sense. The company that sold for, it looks like a 90, 95 million up in there. They both had 1,200 units. Company that sold for 55 million or somewhere in that 50 to 55 million. They had 850 units. But then you can see all these other ones here range anywhere from 75 all the way up to like 450. I think there's a 600 in there, but you can see kind of the multiples in there. I think the orange dot is the mean, if I'm not mistaken on this, but just thought this was an interesting way. Again, so it's multiple on the left axis, sale price on the bottom axis, and then you have number of units in there. Here's just like another view of this data. Again, I'll share all this, but again, you get the left axis is multiples. The right or the bottom axis is the price per contract, and then you have number of units under management. But check that out. I mean, you see some of these companies that got $100,000 a contract. They only had 250 and 175 properties in their portfolio. So you can just see a cool little, spreading here of the differences of these contracts. So again, I'll be sharing this afterwards. So, all right, let's dive in and talk a little bit about, more of the true metrics when it comes down to leads and CAC and unit economics. So first up is cost per lead. What is CPL? Again, stands for cost per lead, and it's very simple. It's the cost to generate a new lead. So let's look at a very simple example here. So if we look at this, so let's say you go out there and you wanted to send out, 2,000 letters. Let's say your average cost is about 250 a letter. And that maybe that's postcards, maybe that's handwritten letters, maybe that's regular letters, maybe that's a marketing brochure. But on average, your average is 250 a letter. So you're spending $5,000 in this example. And let's say you get a 1% response rate, which is usually kind of your target in direct mail. So what we're going to shoot for. That nets you 20 calls. Well, guess what? Those 20 calls don't just automatically correlate into leads. Some people are just tire kickers. Some people are just kind of feeling you out. Some people, maybe won't give you some information. Maybe you just realize that they're looking to buy a house. They don't have a house yet, so it's not necessarily a lead yet. So let's say your call to lead ratio is about 50%. So that nets you 10 leads. So, all right, let's say math geniuses here. What does that come out to on a cost per lead basis? So we've invested $5,000. We got 10 leads. So we have a cost per lead of $500. And I'm telling you, this is pretty, normal. It depends on your market. You might be in a super competitive market, and it might be more expensive. You might be in a lower end market, where you have tons of leads coming in here. But here's what I would say. When you get a phone call now, when you get a lead, think of it a little bit differently when you realize you were paying $500 potentially to get a new lead. I actually did this at a conference one time. I got a couple $100 bills and I lit them on stage to prove a point. To prove a point, that's what it costs to generate a new phone call. And you will look at leads a little bit differently if you know how much it is. You will maybe, monitor your biz dev rep, make sure, he or she is actually responding to those leads. We've done so much secret shopping in this industry, and it blows your mind how slow people are to respond, if they even respond at all. So again, please, 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 please be super responsive. That's why at Vintory we actually launched an inbound appointment setting service because we knew the probably the most important part and defining success is if you answer the damn phone. I hate to put it so bluntly, but it's so true. If you answer the phone, you are so much more likely to close that deal. And we've actually had many of our, with our call answering service, our team tells us, man, you were the first people that actually picked up the phone. And it's really, really critically important when you see how expensive these leads are to generate. So this was just another data point. I wanted to kind of share this. A couple months ago, I did a survey on LinkedIn. It's not a scientific study, but we did get about 61 votes. I said, hey, if you're a vacation rental manager, what would your maximum willingness to pay for a new management contract that would generate $75,000 in top line income? Now we know from before that's a $75,000 lifetime value. So if you were going to make $75,000 in lifetime profits, what would be your willingness to pay for that? And I was actually shocked people wouldn't pay more. Only 36%. So the largest swath said they would only pay up to $1,000 for that lead. Think about that. Pay $1,000 to get $75,000 in return. Now, makes me feel a little bit better. 23% said they would pay up to $5,000 to get that new deal. And then we had 30% agree to pay $7,500, which is the average first year net margins. So that is kind of our target. We're going to talk about that in the future here. We're going to talk about CAC. Our target rate is usually to kind of cover your first year margins as the maximum is the target rate of what you want to end up paying to get a new lead. And then at the time, Jacoby had some data that showed across all his portfolio from beginning when this survey was done, the average M&A purchase price was about $29,000 a contract. So some people would actually pay up to $29,000 for that contract, which I thought was interesting. So that's it. All right, let's change gears a little bit. Let's start with CAC. So again, what is CAC? Customer acquisitions cost. What does it cost to generate a full new customer? So if you remember this slide from before, this is our cost per lead. Well, we just added in one more, filter in here. We had one more step in the sales funnel, and that's our conversion rate. And 10%, that's usually kind of our target rate. Our fractional business development team that we have usually closes about 25% on average. But here in this kind of case, we're going to look for 10% for just the numbers, keep it simple. And that's what we see across the board, a lot of our partners. So that will net you one deal. So again, it's pretty simple here. You spent $5,000, you generated one contract, and that your CAC in this case, customer acquisition cost, is $5,000. Now, many people will, ask me, well, Brooke, what do you include in that? It really depends. I would not, we usually do not count onboarding fees towards that. And we also don't historically put the people into that because a lot of times what we found is most of our partners, they don't have dedicated business development reps. They have, it's the GM doing it as like this, a secondary thing. It's the owner of the company doing it as a secondary. So, just to kind of keep the numbers simple, we traditionally have not done that. If you truly want to do it, as long as you're comparing apples to apples and you do have a full-time business development rep, then you probably should count that biz dev rep into the numbers as well. But again, very, very few people have full-time business development reps. All right. So again, using our example for the property that does 50,000 in gross booking revenue and $5,000 in first year margins or $416 a month. If you break that down divided by 12 months, you can see we have this cash outlay of $5,000, right, to acquire it. And we have this awesome stream of profits of $416 a month, as long as you keep that property in your rental program. So here's what it looks like on, kind of month by month basis. And here's what it looks like on a cumulative basis. So after 12 months, we've broken even. And that's what we're shooting for. Again, our typical CAC recovery target is we want it that first year. And you're like, Brooke, you mean I got to work for a year just to pay back this property? Yes, because on average, you're keeping the property in your rental program for 10 years. And therefore, years 2 through 10 are all profit. So again, here's what it looks like on the lifetime. Again, invested 5,000, profited 50K, so it's netting us 45,000 over the life of the property. That is an incredible return. Let's just to kind of like maybe compare to investing in the stock market. Here's hopefully an example that makes it relevant. So if you were to invest that same $5,000 into a low cost, mutual fund, call it like a Vanguard, and put it into an index fund like the Vanguard Index, S&P 500 Index. And let's just say you were to crush it. Usually it's averages anywhere between 10 and 12%. But let's just say, for this sake, it does really, really well and does 15%, which again is fantastic. You would actually end up having, I'm sorry, in this example, 12%. You would have $15,000. So 12% return, which again is the market, you have 15,000 versus 45,000. So again, it's not even close. I'd argue again, there is not a better ROI on the planet than investing in inventory acquisition. So not only though, are you making that return of this, but what this doesn't count is again, what? The value of the contracts if and when you decide to sell your company. So I'd say it's actually like a double whammy that you're getting here. All right, let's talk about unit economics. We're going to shift gears a little bit. So the definition is pretty simple. Can I make more profit from my customers than it costs me to acquire them? So there's a couple ones we want to talk about here. The first is ROI, return on investment, which I think most people understand that concept. And then the other one is the holy grail of all metrics for inventory acquisition. It's called LTV to CAC ratio. So lifetime value to customer acquisition cost. Now, again, I'm not using staffing or onboarding cost into these calculations. So a return on investment. For every dollar I invest in inventory acquisition, how much do I make in profit? So the first year ROI, you're looking at target of 1x. We kind of made that pretty clear before. And on a 5-year ROI, what we're shooting for is 4x our money. So think about that for a second. So if my financial advisor were to tell me, hey, Brooke, you give me $1,000, I'm gonna, multiply it times five, or I'm sorry, by four over the next 5 years, I would be jumping all over that and I'd give them my money. So that's kind of the ROI. And then here's the big one right here. This is the LTV to CAC ratio. So again, the lifetime of profits of a property versus the cost to acquire them. And this is, again, the holy grail of all inventory acquisition metrics. So if you're only going to track one metric for inventory acquisition, this is it. Put it on your KPI, put it on your dashboards. It takes into account all the key factors, including profit margins, churn, and acquisition cost into one ratio. So again, on our example before, we had $5,000 in CAC, lifetime value of 50,000. So this would be a LTV to CAC ratio of 10 or 10 to 1. So again, that's going to be what we're shooting for and kind of our targets in this kind of case. Now, let's say you bring in a property doing 100,000 and you can actually go up to $10,000 in CAC to acquire that property and you're still home free. Or better yet, keep your CAC at $5,000 and do 100,000. You got a 20 to 1 CAC LTV to CAC ratio. So again, really, really important metric here that everyone should be tracking. Everyone should put it on their dashboards and KPIs. So here's the thing. If you've got a solid LTV to CAC ratio and you've got a systematic way of generating new properties, back up a truck of cash and invest it back in your business because you've got a money printing machine. You're like putting dollar bills on one end, like we show here in this animation, and now 50s and hundreds are coming out the other end. Plus, when you decide to sell your company, you're going to get a huge check, 20, 30, 40, 50, 70, maybe in some cases, $100,000 per contract. So again, I'd argue there's not a better ROI out there than doing it this way. All right. So that's it. We'll open it up for some Q&A here. So do me a favor. Go to Vintory.com/metrics. You can get a PDF of this presentation, including, again, those historical multiples. You can also get a recording of this presentation, and you can get a free copy of any one of my books. Yeah, and happy to open it up for Q&A right now. So, also, if you book a demo with us, we will give you an Amazon gift card for $50. Get mom some presents, get your wife some presents, or spouse some presents, and so on. So, with that said, let's open it up for some Q&A. You got some questions? Feel free to put it in there. All right. First one here. What are some ways companies can maximize their multiples when selling? So, again, this is according to Jacoby. Growing fast organically is one. If you grow fast organically, obviously that's a great way to help increase your multiple. If you have a systematic way of adding new inventory, it's another way to do it. High EBITDA, obviously, that's what they're really looking for. And the more EBITDA you have, the higher the multiples go, just because private equity traditionally likes to, invest in bigger companies. They don't want to mess with the smaller ones. Obviously, low churn. And one thing I've heard time and time again from Jacoby on this is, not being too reliant on the owner for everything. So the owner of the company, you want to make it where if that person leaves, that they have a solid team in place and they have, again, that systematic way of, adding on new inventory on there. All right, let's see. Someone asked, you showed a cost per lead of 500 in your example. What are some meaningful ways to improve that? Um, uh, I assume they mean like improve, like lower the cost. So obviously start with good solid data. I've said this many times, 50% of all your marketing just comes down to your list. Really having a good list, being responsive. We talked about that, being super responsive. Again, we have secret shops, so many different companies, and you'd be surprised at how many people, how rarely people answer the phone or even respond to the leads that come in. So if you respond, you're going to be ahead of the game there. And obviously that's going to drive down your CAC a little bit. Let's see. We have also here's another one. If I want to start tracking these metrics in my own business tomorrow, where should I start? Obviously, get a great CRM and track those leads. HubSpot, obviously, you can get some, CRM. Be careful before you know it, though. Even though it's free, you end up spending like us $4,000 or $5,000 a month. Shameless plug, Vintory does have a CRM specifically for the short-term rental industry. Um, Let's see. Here's one. What are you seeing in markets where they ban new vacation rentals and there are 50 plus year wait list? Summit County, Colorado. Your only path for growth is to steal inventory from other national or local property management companies, i.e., your neighbors. Any strategies that work well while not destroying your community? That's a tough one because I mean, there's only so much out there. I mean, I would say going after RBOs. I think according to Jason, half of the market is RBO. Jason over Key Data, and going after them, and obviously, seeing if you can make your life easier. I mean, one trick I used to do when I had Vantage is I would very often I'd say, "Hey, what are you making now?" Like I will be able to beat that. And I did some things where I would guarantee. I know it was kind of risky, but I guaranteed my rental rates. I was so confident in it. I know I would outperform them. So I said, "Look, I'm doing all the work for you. You're netting the same, even after paying me um, my questions or paying my commission." So. Let's see what else. We have another one in here. If I'm not planning on selling my business soon, why should I care about these valuation multiples? Well, that's a good point. So I mean, I think I've heard this before, and it's so true. Build a business prepared to sell it. And then what you'll end up realizing is you've built such a great business. And there's a reason why all these private equity companies want these metrics to be in line with what they are, because you're building a great, solid business. So if you build the company as though you're going to sell it, and then just you may end up realizing, you know what, this thing is throwing off so much cash. And it's such a great business that I don't even want to sell it. So that's the way kind of I always look at it. There's a reason why. So reverse engineer your goals based on some of the what these private equity companies are looking at, and so on. So, any other questions? If not, then I appreciate it. Thank you all for coming out. Again, my name is Brooke. Feel free to email me anytime, brooke@vintory.com. Got my cell phone on here as well. Feel free to ping me if you need anything. Again, if you get a demo of Vintory, we'll give you a $50 Amazon gift card, and go ahead and go to that vintory.com/metrics, and we'll give you a recording of this presentation and the slide deck and everything else. So appreciate everyone coming out. Thank you.